Hello everyone, welcome to 3ddesignacademy.com. In this lesson, we will continue with part 10 of the Lamborghini Aventador project. So in the previous lesson, we spent some time developing the body side, and I think we are pretty much there. There are more refinements to be made, but I think the basic shape and the majority of the surfaces are done. So I think I'm going to move on to the rear. So let's go ahead and start building some surfaces. Okay, so one thing to notice in the Lamborghini Aventador is a lot of, well, especially with the LP750, you will see that it's not a lot of surfaces, but it's a lot of, I guess, blade kind of shapes. So it's going to be a little bit different than building a traditional vehicle. So let's go ahead and develop some curves and surfaces. Okay, so I don't know why there are two. Oh, okay. So so this curve, there are several curves that I need to be aware of. Okay. And before we start, before we continue to build, I think I'm going to make a little change over here. So if you look at this, I actually pointed this curve over here, but you'll see that it's a little bit, I think this is a little bit too rearward of vehicle. So I think I probably need to snap it right here because that's what side view shows. And if you look at this point over here, I think that's where the body was supposed to be. I positioned it where the wing was, wing is, but I don't think that's the correct location. So I think I'm going to go ahead and change this up a little bit. Okay, so in order to that, first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to move this curve forward. Actually, I should probably move both of the curves forward and car like this. And I would say that's a pretty good location. I think it looks good from the side as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab the stretch tool and I'm going to snap this curve over here like this. And I'm going to snap this one over here like that. And let's take a look at the perspective view, make sure that it's good. Not a lot of changes over here, just refining here and there. And I probably want to add a little bit of crown to pop it out. Okay, so I think that looks good. The bigger challenge is, of course, changing this one. So what I'm going to do is first of all, I'm just going to delete the construction history over here so it doesn't do anything funky. And I'm just going to untrim this piece over here like that. And let's go ahead and I'm going to just extend it back. So just going to extend it back like this, and I'm going to just use the align tool. There's a little bit of height difference, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to grab this surface edge over here and I'm just going to snap it over here, and I'm going to use the partial command to just place it like this. Looks like the curve was a little bit, the surface was a little bit short here, so I'm just going to go ahead and extend that. And I think that looks okay. However, because of the surface change, well, actually, I'm liking the height over here, so I think I'm just going to leave it. Usually, I probably want to do a blend, but for this one, I think I'm just going to leave it like this. And actually, before I do that, let me just do a revert. Okay, so I want to make sure that whatever location this is the theoretical location that we had before. It looks like it's a little bit long. So what I'm going to do, actually, let's just check this surface over here. Okay, so it is long. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to extend it back to that exact location over here. Oh, did I move any curves? Yes, I did. Actually, that curve, I think I can toss because right now it's not even at the right location. So I'm just going to toss that, and I'm just going to extend this back over here like this. And I probably need to extend this surface back over here as well so that we are moving about the theoretical line. I think part of the reason why it's doing this is because I'm untrimming the surfaces, and that's causing a little bit of havoc on the blend curves, which is fine. We don't need them anymore, so let's just go ahead and extend this back, and let's go ahead and make some adjustments over here. Okay, so you'll notice that this is where because of the changes that we made, the surface is floating a little bit higher than the intended curve position. So let me just make sure that it is a good location. Let's go ahead and yeah, I think we are right at the theoretical over here and here as well. Let me just check. Yeah, I think that looks good. So I'm just going to hide that back. And now that we've done that, I'm just going to align this surface back down over here. Extend it all the way over here. This one, I think it is, the location is good. Well, actually, you know what? Looks like it's a little bit short here too. So let's just snap it back like this. And I'm going to go ahead and just trim it back. And I think that looks good. And I'm going to just do the same thing over here. I'm just going to untrim this all the way through. Oh, actually, I should have just left it over here. Of course, I'm going to use the extend tool to snap it back like this. And I'm going to align this one, this surface over here as well. Okay, so you'll see that it is actually positional. So in this case, what you need to do is you have to increase the position influence to max, so that it is positional. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn blending on, and whatever changes that I made to this one, we are going to follow suit with this one, because if you look at the proxy display here, you'll notice that it is the location change over here, but that's not been updated over here. So now I'm just going to turn blending on, extra CV 1, 2. You'll notice that it went down compared to a green line, but we want to make sure that everything goes down at the same rate. So I'm going to turn blend factor to 0, and I think that looks much better. Okay, so the changes are done, and now I'm just going to trim. I'm going to trim this surface over here, and I'm going to trim this one over here. Now, looks like all of my carbon surfaces still have a history, so I think it looks pretty good. I don't think I have to do anything extra. However, because of the surface changes, this blend, these two blends over here are off. So what I'm going to do is, well, let me just turn the curves off, and I'm just going to use align. It's going to be G2, but in this case, I'm going to turn blending off because I like the CV locations of the surface over here. So I'm just going to grab this one, align. It's going to be edge. I just want to make sure that it is edge. And in this case, because it needs to go all the way through, I'm going to turn partial off. And I'm going to do the same thing over here. And I'm going to make sure that this is edge over here as well. Okay, so that looks good. I believe the highlight still flows well, and we made the changes, so I'm pretty happy with that. So now let's go ahead and actually develop some of the surfaces that are in the rear. Okay, so I'm going to start with this flat over here. I'm just going to start at the top and work my way down. And it's actually kind of hard to see, so let me just see if I can find an image of the rear that has a little bit more detail and a little bit more zoom, I guess. Okay, as you can see over here, there's a little bit flat here, and it looks like it's extending down. So I'm going to try to develop those surfaces. Actually, let me just take a look at one more image and try to check on, make sure that I have all the details. Okay, so I think, yeah, I think that's a pretty good image. It looks like there's a little feature over here, but that's for the top. So I think this is a good, yeah, I think this is a good spot. Actually, I'm starting to think that it might have a different section than what I'm expecting, because if you see this image over here, you'll see that this has it's actually facing upward, and this whole surface is facing downwards. So I'm wondering if I should be aware of that, and I think that is the primary character line that's extending all the way over here. So I guess the only way to find out is, of course, check on more image references. I personally want to stick to the real, to the detail as much as possible. And I believe that is the case. Okay, so I think this image is definitely a confirm. Well, actually, you know what? I'm seeing something a little bit different. Let's see. Oh, what do you know? Okay, so I think there's definitely a downward surface over here. So I think we should definitely pay attention to that. Okay, so it is always a good practice to make sure that you study different surface references so that you get, because you are looking at an image, you are not actually looking at the car. So sometimes you want to verify to make sure that you have the right idea of what the surfaces are doing. Okay, so I definitely think that this surface is extending all the way through. Okay, so let's go ahead and develop that. Okay, so before I do that, however, I do need a curve for this one. There should be a break. So if you look at this image over here, let me just zoom in. So you'll notice that there is a break here, which is displayed by this curve, represented by this curve, and there needs to be one that is responsible for this break over here. So I'm going to develop that. So let's go ahead and strike some curves. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab a curve over here, and wherever I think the break is, I'm going to, let's see. There is a bend in the spoiler right here, and you'll see that it's extending all the way through. I think that's probably a good location to reference. I know it looks like it's a little bit off, but I'm pretty sure it's because of the perspective. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to strike a curve right here, and I'm going to strike a curve there, and I'm just going to make it into degree 2 so that's nice and simple. So degree 2. And I'm going to give it a little bit of crown. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the stretch tool and just point it forward a little bit, because there's a little bit of offset between the spoiler and the body. I think that looks good, and I just want to make sure that this is actually at the center. So I'm just going to grab the stretch tool like this, and I'm going to snap it like that. I think that looks pretty good. And I just want to make sure that it is somewhat parallel. I know there's a little bit less crown here. I don't think it looks like on the orthographic drawing, it looks like there's a little bit of a soft edge going on, but I don't think that is true, because if you look at this, it looks pointy. It looks pretty pointy to me. So I think I'm just going to make sure, just keep the curve this way. Being mindful of this. Okay, I think that looks pretty good. And I just want to make sure from the rear view that it is also correct. So let me see. Okay, so I think it is rising up just a little bit. Could be due to perspective, but I believe that it is actually rising at least a little bit. I'm going to see if I can find another dead rear. Yeah, I do definitely think that it's rising. So let's go ahead and put that in. So I'm going to make sure that it's right. Okay, so I think, well, it's kind of hard to see because the resolution of the image is really bad, but I think about this angle should be good. And I'm going to give it just a little bit of crown for a little bit of refinement. Okay, so I think that looks good, and I'm going to go ahead and put a little flat there. So I'm just going to, let's see, I'm going to put a little flat there, and I might add a little bit of crown, but I think I just want to make sure that I develop all the surfaces first before I do that. So I'm just going to do a rail 1 and 1. And I'm just going to do the same thing over here like this. And it's a little bit long. So what I'm going to do is, well, first of all, I think I'm just going to delete the construction history on this surface over here. I don't want anything weird and funky to happen. So I'm just going to delete the construction history on all these surfaces over here like that. And I'm just going to, let's go ahead and extend this curve back to this position so that it's nice and just touching there instead of extending all the way over there. Okay, so now let's do another rail over here. If you notice in the image, let's go ahead and look at this one. You'll see that it's actually sort of disappearing into this face or the rear wheel flat over here. So you just want to make sure that it's you don't want, but however you don't want to create a triangle. So I'm just going to do a rail over here, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy and paste this one over here, and I'm going to snap this curve, this over here. Actually, make sure that it is okay. So I think I might have. I just want to make sure that it is somewhat straight or have a little positive crown instead of a negative. In this case, I'm just going to do that, and I'm going to copy and paste this one again because of the changes that we made. And I'm just going to snap this one right back, and it's going to be the basis for this surface over here. So what I'm going to do is, well, actually, let me just check to make sure everything looks good. Okay, and let's go just take a look at the image. Well, this one I'm going to turn off for a sec. Okay. Okay, so let me just go ahead and develop some lines from the rear. Oh, actually, let's go from the side view first. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab a curve like this, and I'm just going to strike a curve over here. Looks like it's a little bit forward, so a little bit rearward, so I'm just going to make it parallel. And I think that looks good from the side, and I'm just going to go to the rear, and looks like it's sticking out a little bit towards the bottom. So I'm just going to do that as well, and I'm just going to, well, if you look at the image, I think there's a little bit of acceleration towards the top. Let me just grab an image that shows the rear. I just, well, I'm not quite sure. I think there's some acceleration. Well, I think the ortho makes it a little bit more pronounced. And I do think that I might have to adjust the angle on this one. So I think it's sticking, going a little bit inboard. Well, actually, it looks like that in the image too, so maybe I'll just stick with that. So if that's the case, I think I might have just gone out a little bit too far outward, so I'm just going to move it back in, and I think I'm just going to stick with something like that. And let's go ahead and develop this surface right here. So for this one, I'm just going to use a bi-rail, so it's just going to be 1 and 2. So it's going to be gen here, rail 1 here, and rail 2 here, and there's the surface. Okay, so I think there's a little bit of twist. I don't know if this is how it's supposed to be, but we'll just stick with it for now. However, this is how you create a nice triangle transition from this without having to create an actual triangular surface. So I think that looks pretty good over there, and let's go, actually, yeah, I might move this outboard a little bit. I don't think there's supposed to be this much curve. I'm just going to make it a little bit flat. So I'm just going to point that out, and I'm going to point this in like this so that it's not too flat. And I think that's going to improve a highlight a little bit. Okay. I might have to think about what to do over here, but let's stick with this for now. Okay, so I think that looks good, and I'm going to go ahead and develop more surfaces. So if you look at this section over here, you will see that there's a surface going all the way down. So let me just do that. Okay, so I think that's just straight. I don't know if they're supposed to bend over here. Well, let's go ahead. I think this is the angle that we're supposed to follow. So I'm just going to do something like that. And I'm going to check it from the rear. Looks like it's let's see. I think I might want to point it up a little bit higher because let's go. Okay, so I think this is, well, you know what? Let's just build the surface and compare with the ortho after that. So with this one again, I'm just going to do a 1-on-1. And this time I'm going to add a little bit of crown. Now I didn't add a crown on this surface because I was still trying to gauge how long it was going to be. But I think this looks pretty good. So I'm going to add a little bit of crown. And because of the history, I should all be updated over here. Okay, so I think that looks pretty good. And actually I'm going to add a little bit of crown, a little bit more crown to this one. Because if you look at the side view, I think there's a little bit too much crown on this surface, but not enough here. So I think it's a good idea to strike a balance between the two. Okay, so I think that looks good. And let's go ahead and take a look. So I think there's supposed to be a little bit of continuation here as well. Okay, so I think that looks good. And I'm going to go ahead and develop the surface that is located at the bottom. So this is going to be this black surface over here. So I'm going to strike another curve to represent that. So I'm just going to do this. Again, I'm going to add a little bit of crown, just a tiny little bit will do. And I'm just going to use a rail like this. And I'm just going to continue on over here. Oh, actually this, I think this section, well, actually, I'm not sure what's going on over here, so I probably have to take a little bit better look at that. But I think there might be a little bit of separation, so I don't think we need that. And this one, on the other hand, I think we need to extend it down a little bit more. So I'm going to extend this curve like this. Now, even with the perspective, I do see a slant as it goes towards the bottom. So I don't know if it's supposed to be flat as the ortho suggests. I think there's a little bit of a peak, so I think I'm just going to leave it like that. However, this one, I think we need to move it up a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I want to keep the angle as closely as possible. So I'm just going to, well, actually, let me just move it up. Let me just move it up like this from the rear view. I think this is the point that we want to hit. So I'm just going to move it like that. I'm going to make sure that it looks good from the side view. I think I'm going to probably point it out a little bit so that it's nice and parallel. And for this curve, I'm just going to use the stretch again to make sure that it hits it. And I think that looks pretty good. Okay, so now let's go ahead and take a look at what we need to do next. Okay, so I think those surfaces will look pretty good, and I'm just going to do a symmetry, make sure that it's nice and balanced. Looks a little bit pointy, so I might just retract it a little bit over at the top like this. Do something like that. Maybe add a little bit more crown. Now the good thing about history is that despite Alias's lack of functionality in history, it does allow me to update things like this. The only problem is because these curves are all a little bit out of place, I do have to move them back, and that's all you need to do. Okay, so I think that looks pretty good, and let's just check with the top view. I think, yeah, I don't think it looks too bad either. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to, let's go ahead and develop more surfaces over here. So looks like this one, I'm going to grab a curve, degree 2 curve like this, and well, actually let's just, okay, so this is definitely a little bit different from the orthographic drawing. As you can see over here, it's actually pointing outboard as it goes down, and it's almost parallel. I think it's in line with where the wing is supposed to be. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to strike a curve like this from the rear. And I'm just going to strike a curve over here like this, and I'm going to make sure that they are parallel in the same section. I know that if I do that, it's going to look weird from the side view, so I'm just going to grab this one and I'm going to just shoot it back like this. And I don't know if what is going on over here. I don't know where this section is meant, but let me just take a look. And okay, so I think that looks good over here, and I'm just going to use the extend tool to balance that out. So I'm just going to move it up a little bit, and I'm going to snap a curve over here, and I think that location is good. Now it looks like it's going down a little bit in the side, so let me just do that, and let's create a little bit flat. Now as you can see over here, you'll see that there's a little flat over here, so I'm going to see if I can put that in. So let me see. Okay, so looks like it's actually, well, actually let's look at the image again. Okay, so it's nice and straight, but it does look like it's going in somewhere over here. So I have to be mindful of that. And now let's just go ahead and I'm going to develop a flat. So actually, you know what? Before I do that, I think I need to pick a side. So what I'm going to do is right now, because of the thickness, so you have to be either on the left or the right side of the this wing-like feature over here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pick the left side like this, so that we can just align this to the top. And I'm going to just create a flat like this over here, and I'm just going to do a monorail based on that. Now because of the movement that we made, I think we probably want to go forward a little bit. For now, I'm just going to snap it over here. Eventually it'll need to go in and intersect, so I probably need to be aware of that, but for now let's just leave it at that. Okay, so next thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to turn merge off, and I'm going to extend this curve over here, and I'm going to just snap a curve like this, and I'm going to develop a surface over here. Okay, so I want to make sure that they are about similar in thickness. And the reason why I'm doing this, the reason why I'm extending this curve is so that when I'm going to just do an edge align like this, so that whenever I make changes to this, basically if I extend this surface with the history with merge on, then it's going to delete the surface, delete the construction history, and I cannot make any adjustments. So what I like to do is, in order to keep the history, I just extend it without having the merge on, or yes, turning the merge off and realigning it, so that whatever movement is applied here, it also applies here, without having to destroy destroy the construction history. Okay, so I'm just going to adjust the thickness of this so that it's about the similar thickness over here. I think that looks good over here, and I'm just going to develop some thickness. Okay, so it looks like it's almost going straight in and out. So let me just go ahead, and I'm going to add a draft. So the draft surface allows me to add a little bit of angle. So I'm just going to do a standard 3 degrees about here, and I'm going to do the same thing over here. And this one looks like it's pointing the other way, so I'm just going to go negative. And I think that looks pretty good. And I'm going to do the same thing over here, and I'm just going to make sure that the angle's correct. And for the bottom surface, I think well, actually, you know what? Let's just keep it at that. Keep it at 3 degrees and see if we need to change it. Okay, so again, I'm just going to add a negative sign so that it points downwards. Okay, so I think that looks pretty good over here. And now this is supposed to go somewhere over here. So I'm going to go ahead and try to develop this surface as well. Okay, so let me just try to get a better picture of this one. Okay, so it looks like it's, oh, that's kind of weird. This is all one surface, I think from here to here, but it's bent in the middle. But I don't know if this is the right location, because if it was just a triangle, I think it'll make more sense. So let me just try to grab a different reference image. Hopefully I can find one that's a little bit more zoomed in. There we go. Okay, so I think that that's a little bit better. You'll see. Oh, okay. Well, I think I should have just used this from the beginning. Okay, so I think there's a little bit of triangle going on. I think either image, maybe it was just the light that was hitting in a little bit different way. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, in order to develop this surface, I'm just going to go ahead. Actually, let me grab this one as well. So I believe I have the curve over here. So I'm just going to delete the construction history on this one. And let me just check from the rear view, make sure that it looks okay. So I'm just going to grab the rear canvas like this. And I'm just going to make sure, I'm just going to give it a little bit of crown. Like that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to, oh, actually this one doesn't show the break. That's unfortunate. However, looking at the feature over here, I think this is where it needs to bend like this. This is where this feature is supposed to end, which means there's a little bend here, and this is where it needs to be. And I think that is a good location. So I think this is probably where I want this to placed. Let's just check from the rear view. Yeah, I think that about fits right here. However, this curve, let me just make sure that it's located right here. Okay, so for this one, here's what I'm going to do. Because there is a little bit bend on the surface over here, so I'm just going to, well, actually before I do that, I'm just going to turn merge off, and I'm going to create another curve based on that one like this, so that we have about the same bend. And I'm just going to point this out, move it a little bit outboard, but let me just turn merge back on, and I'm just going to do that. And from the rear view, I'm just going to push it out like this. And whatever. Okay, so I think that's good. And I'm just going to use the stretch tool to push this one out like that. I don't think I want to do it too much, because technically the surface is soft flush to this body panel over here. So what I need to do is I actually need to do this. And with that one, I think we can reduce the angle a little bit, and I think we can push this one back in like that. Okay, so I think that looks good. Okay, so let me just see what's going on over here. So I do think that whatever body panel we have, whatever wheel flat we have, it's supposed to just become one line. At least that's what it looks like to me. You'll see that there's definitely a break here, but it just disappears over here. So if that's the case, what I need to do is I need to, oh, okay. So I think that's going to also reduce the amount of crown over here, which is a good thing. So what I need to do is, well, let me just duplicate this curve over here so that we have about the same gesture, and I'm just going to snap it over here. And now this fillet, oh, why is there a history on this one? Well, doesn't matter. I'm just going to delete it, and I'm using the stretch tool. I'm going to just snap it over here like this. Actually, let me just extend it back. So I'm just going to grab this one, that, and I'm just going to snap the curve, snap to the curve like this. And I think that looks good. Okay, so you'll see that this actually has a little bit of a different gesture than this one. So we actually have to rebuild the surfaces. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to delete this one, and I'm going to delete this one. So same thing that we did over here, I'm going to apply on to this area as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to rebuild using a square, because this is supposed to be just one line. You can have some weird crown like this. So I'm going to do that, and I'm going to do the same thing over here. It's just going to be square. Actually, we can actually probably try a bi-rail, see if that works better. Okay, so it's just going to be 1, 2, and 3. And I'm going to just do a rebuild over here. Looks like we got some problem here, so I'm just going to make it 2 and 2. This is really frustrating because Alias shouldn't be doing this. I don't know which update this was caused by, but the problem is sometimes it just the bi-rail just stops somewhere short, and I have to do a rebuild, which actually throws it off of the position, throws it off from the curve location when you do a rebuild. So that means you have to increase the degree. I mean, right now the surface is pretty clean, so I think I don't have to worry about it too much, but it's just so one thing that frustrates me about this version. Okay, nevertheless, I think the highlight's a little bit better, but I still do think that it's crawling in a little bit too much, so I probably have to do a little bit of adjustment there. And this one, I think I have to fix this one. If you can see the highlight over here, it's going from, yeah, this definitely needs a little bit of adjustment, so I probably have to angle this one a little bit. And I would probably prefer this to pop out a little bit, so we'll have to manage that a little bit later. Okay, so I think this is a pretty good spot to stop, and we'll continue this in the next lesson. So that's it for part 10. We will continue building in the next tutorial, and thank you guys for watching.